So yeah, as Charlie mentioned, I've been spending a lot of time looking at and improving hotel conversion experiences. More specifically, understanding the impact that personalization has on users and how their needs change once they are using different devices like mobile. So this session is all about sharing what I've learned so that you can start thinking about how you can be optimizing your own mobile booking experiences. And you will all get a copy of this deck afterwards, so don't worry about taking notes as you go. You'll be able to reflect back on it in your own time afterwards as well. So in this session, I'm going to share with you why mobile matters now more than ever, although I'm sure it's not a surprise to you, some tools and techniques that you can use to understand how your experience measures up, and also give you some ideas on how you can make it even better. So there are some interactive elements of this session as well, and I'll be splitting everyone into breakout rooms soon to give you a bit of a chance to put this theory into practice. But to start with, why mobile is so important. COVID-19 has had a massive impact on guest behavior. Guests are uncertain about making plans. They're leaning more and more towards short stays or short lead times for their stays, and they're making these bookings on their mobile phones. So these graphs show the change in booking behavior for different countries, right from when COVID hit to today. The orange line is mobile bookings and the purple are desktop. So you can see that mobile generally took a little longer to drop and has bounced back faster than desktop bookings. So it's proving to be a bit more of a resilient cohort of guests looking on mobile. In Indonesia, mobile has even overtaken desktop, showing it as a more resilient cohort. So mobile guests are more important to convert than ever. The move to mobile was already a growing trend, but COVID-19 has definitely accelerated it. So in terms of revenue, the share from mobile has doubled since the start of the year. You can no longer really afford to lose out on mobile guests, which makes your mobile booking experience more important than ever. But where do you start with understanding your experience today and how it's already performing? That's where UX testing tools come into play with the principle of you can't really improve what you can't measure. So there are two categories of tools that measure user experience. These are quantitative and qualitative ones. So quantitative are data-driven and qualitative are tests that measure how users feel or what they say, both before, during, and after purchasing a product. So this includes things like loyalty, satisfaction, and ease of use of an experience. So ultimately, data alone can't be used to answer all of your questions about usability, and good design is often informed by elements of both types of these tests. They need to be used hand in hand to get the full picture of performance of an experience. So for today, we're going to touch on one tool of each type, starting with data-driven and the Google performance scores, and then getting into some user testing to try your hand at qualitative feedback. So the pre-work for this was to run your mobile booking engine through the Google Lighthouse tool, and you should have produced a set of scores across 4 key areas of user experience from Google. So this is sort of performance, accessibility, best practices, and SEO. So hopefully you have your own scores to hand now. We're going to be focusing in on the performance score, and the scale for Google ranges from green for good if you're above 90, between 50 and 89 if you're okay, and it usually shows in orange. And then if you have a score below 49 for performance, it shows in red. So I'm just going to start to ask you to share which of these 3 brackets your mobile performance currently falls into, just to get a read from the room of how you measure up based on the test you've run. So if you don't mind putting your thumb up if you're in the green and you're pretty happy, your thumb in the middle if you're somewhere in like the orange and it needs some work. And if your score came up in red, can you just put your thumb down so we understand how everyone is currently doing in terms of Google's rankings? Okay, so we've got some thumbs in the middle, some thumbs down, thumbs in the middle. Okay, to be honest, that's not surprising. It's pretty common for hotel booking experiences not to score that well in these Google Lighthouse tests. The average performance score for the most popular booking engines actually sits around 20, so very much in the red. And it's slow loading speeds that are pulling down this score, and it's ultimately causing worse experiences for your mobile guests. So mobile guests are impatient. If they make any search on your booking engine and have to wait more than a couple of seconds to see any prices, they're likely to leave before you've even had a chance to influence them with your offers. And you have to assume that mobile guests are likely doing something else whilst they're also browsing. So you only have half of their attention to begin with. So the longer it takes those prices to load in, the less and less of their attention you're actually capturing. So you're going to lose them at a shorter time span than you would if they were on desktop. So any improvements to the speed and loading times of the page will really improve this performance score. And this can be achieved through things like caching techniques, using small image sizes, moving to server-side rendering. And there are other more creative ways that you can also use design to reduce the amount of content that is actually requested in that first load, so users aren't waiting ages before they can interact and engage with the page. The ultimate aim is for guests to get the information they need as quickly as possible. And faster loading speeds have numerous benefits, including lower bounce rates, more page views per session, and ultimately leading to higher conversion rates. Now onto a more qualitative method of testing to use alongside this data you've now got, and that's completing a UX assessment. So UX, user experience. It ultimately has 5 key elements, and they're listed here. So we've got usability, how quick and easy it is for guests to make a booking when on their phone, especially with that limited screen size. There's useful content, so can the guest make sense of the information and decide between the choices presented to them quickly and easily? We know there's a direct correlation between the number of choices presented and the time it takes someone to make a decision. So you don't want to make that decision process too long for them. You want to give them the information they need upfront so they can move through quickly. And then with desirable content, so does the experience create the connection and a more personal feel to the guest, making it more effective at influencing them? With accessibility, you need to consider if you're inadvertently preventing a much wider group of guests from actually booking on your site. And in terms of credibility, so trust and reputation play a major role here. If there's any broken or blocked content, it can really negatively impact the guest perception of the hotel and overall reduce their trust in it. And there's a definite theme here. The simpler the booking process, the less likely you are to lose the guest. So it needs to be simple and it needs to take guests on a journey, but with a level of attention to detail that keeps drawing them along the experience, rather than creating potential points of friction that might give them a reason to just leave and do something else. So here are the same 5 areas of UX with some examples of how they can be applied to hotel booking experiences and what good looks like. So this is the UX checklist that is also provided in your handouts, and we'll be using it in the exercise in a minute. But before we get into that, I wanted to make it a little bit more tangible by showing some websites that have really considered their users' needs and solve some of these potential pain points in their own experiences. So some of these are from travel sites, others are from larger tech and e-commerce companies who ultimately all have to think about their users' needs and deliver an experience that influences them to make a purchase. So first up, we have usability. So making it quick and easy for users to achieve their goal, with features including express checkouts, one-click payments, being super upfront about the number of steps involved, and having options for visitors to create accounts if they're going to be repeat visitors and are likely to come back, ultimately making it easier for them when they do come back. For useful content, so making it easy for users to digest information through summarizing reviews, highlighting out sort of key takeaways and areas of information that's really important to users so that they don't have to read all of that data themselves and create their own takeaways. Ultimately, it's presenting this data in a really structured way that makes it easy for guests to pull out the bits that matter most to them. And you'll see here, like travel sites, it usually is price. And these 2 companies have called out the price in quite a bold way. For desirable content, so some experiences really lean on their branding and tone of voice, and others bring in personalization, which engages users on a more personal level, often utilizing user profiles and data to dynamically change content based on who you are and where you're looking at it from. With accessibility, there are so many elements of this category. Having sufficiently contrasting brand colors is one part of it. And in your handout, you'll see a few links where you can explore accessibility and color contrasts a little bit further, which you probably won't have time to do in your breakout rooms, but if you're interested, you have the links there. But there are also other important elements of accessibility. So ensuring buttons are descriptive, not just click now. It really helps those who rely on screen readers, as well as ensuring content is laid out in a very linear structure. And so this avoids what can be seen as a wall of text And if you have simple bullet points instead, it makes it easier for users to parse that amount of content if they would normally struggle a bit. And with credibility, so you might have noticed some common features of pretty much any payment experience with extra reassurance messages around security, padlock icons, anything that gives users extra peace of mind just as they're about to pay. It's another way to avoid second thoughts and get the users over that line. So complete transparency and breakdown of fees is a really good way to build trust with users if they're looking to book. Cool. So that was kind of a crash course in user experience and the key elements to a good mobile experience. It's kind of over to you now to put some of this into practice and get some more qualitative feedback on your own experiences. And this is going to be achieved through some user testing. So if you haven't heard of a user test before, don't worry, we'll walk you through it. User tests are a pretty common tool in design used to better understand the effectiveness and friction points of a user's experience. So you ask a user to complete a very specific task and then observe and listen to how they go about it. You can watch, see if they struggle, listen to the comments that they're making. And these tests can give you a really rich insight into who you're building this experience for and what they need from it, not just what you would want from it if you were going through the flow. And by really focusing in on your guest and their needs, you can uncover a lot about what the design needs to do to properly meet them. So you're going to be split up into pairs, and you should have all of these details in the handout, so you'll be able to refer to them once you're in the different rooms. Essentially, one of you will be acting as the guest, trying to book a room on the hotelier's mobile experience, and the other one is the hotelier, so getting some feedback from a real user who is new to your site and experiencing it for the first time. And there'll be a chance to swap roles, so you'll get the opportunity to do both parts of the test, essentially. So when you're the guest, you have a very specific scenario to follow. Make a booking on the hotel site from your mobile phone. And while you obviously don't actually need to book the room and click pay, it is worth entering all of your details to make sure you get as complete of an experience as possible, because you might be surprised with what you learn when you're at the very late stages of the funnel. So when you're the subject of a user test, the best way to approach it is to say pretty much everything you're seeing and thinking out loud as you move through the experience. So you'll be on your phone, the hotelier won't be able to see your screen. So you need to be very vocal about the content you're looking at, how that's impacting your decisions as you move through the flow. So share which bits of information you first notice, how you're deciding which room to choose. All of this will help the hotelier build up a picture of if the design is actually helping you move through the flow, or if there are potential friction points that they could remove to make it even easier for you. And it can feel a little bit awkward at first if you're not used to sort of vocalizing everything you're doing on your phone as you're moving through it. But it really is so valuable for hoteliers, and there's no right or wrong thing to say. So don't worry too much about that. And then when you're the hotelier, so the other side of the pair, you should use the UX checklist that's provided and take notes as the guest is moving through the experience. So capture comments on the things that they say they like, the usability, the content that they're reading. And if you notice that they're struggling, ask them why, prompt them to share sort of their thoughts and feelings on a particular part of the flow. There's also space in your worksheets to capture these thoughts too. And bear in mind that the learnings might not always come from what they're actively saying out loud. You might notice that they seem a little frustrated or a little confused, or maybe they're just flying through and having a great time. All of that is really rich insight to capture, so you get sort of the more human part of the feedback too. And during the testing, if you're stuck at any point, here are some useful starting points. They're also included in your pack. The types of things to consider, either asking as the hotelier or sharing as the guest when you're moving through the experience and weighing up if it's meeting your needs or not. And I think we might be ready to start the exercises unless anyone has any questions before you get thrown into your pairs and into your rooms.